So my name is Bertie Van Wyck. I'm part of our global insight group along with Oliver. Today we want to share with you up-to-date detailed research and insight on places to belong. And this is pretty much what you signed up for. Places to belong. We want to look at how hybrid work strategies can promote a more inclusive and equitable future. That is going to be our goal here. This talk is related directly to one that Oliver has done earlier on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that will form a really big part around how we're looking at how your hybrid workplace strategy and your spaces can create environments where people feel like they belong. So first off, for those of you that might not know, we're now part of the MillerKnoll group. And if you want to see this as pretty much as a movie, the title of the movie is MillerKnoll, and then your leading actors or actresses is Herman Miller and Knoll. And then we have all these lovely brands that form the supporting cast to this wonderful brand that we have. So we're part of MillerKnoll, and these are all the brands that are part of our team. So a more equitable future. This is specifically what we'll focus on. It's an opportune time for us to collectively elevate the conversation about the hybrid workplace strategies. And it's key to have specifically the conversations around what is your strategies and what should we follow to create a more inclusive experience and environments where we feel that we are a part of that organization. So flexibility, first of all, is absolutely key. The key to a more equitable future is right in the title. It is flexibility. The rapid changes spurred by the pandemic in 2020 are starting to slow. We know that is true. If you look at the graph on the right-hand side, we're simplifying this, of course. You get your office first strategies, which is 5 days in the office. You get your remote first strategies. Between 5 and 10% of organizations are following that. That's 5 days working from home. And then everything in between, whether it's 1 day a week or 1 day every 2 weeks or 2 days a week, that is what we see as part of your hybrid strategy. Hybrid work strategies have emerged as the preferred approach for employees. We know that is what we're predicting for the future. Most people prefer to have that option available to them. And now it's up to the leaders to shift our mindset, to raise our standards. And it really is important that leadership takes control and that management takes control and understands the why we want people back into the office. Not the Fridays are a little bit quiet. We're going to enforce rules to try and ensure that people come back into the space. That's not what we're after. We have to explain the why and communicate that clearly. We had a fantastic speaker on earlier, and we will send you the link to it, called Andreas Hofbauer, who's a organizational sociologist. And he identified 3 key things that are lacking from, say, the pandemic that we are struggling with currently. And he explained that people are actually feeling disconnected from their organizations. So it's important to think about what were those key moments? What were those key moments that made you feel that you really were a part of that organization, that make you feel much more connected to that organization? And then go out of your way to try and actually mimic those moments, plan those moments so that everyone in your organization can have that experience. He also talks about the thinning of the cross-cutting ties that binds different areas of the organization. So specifically looking at what groups are kind of weakly connected to others, and potentially in your organization, what groups aren't connected at all that really should be connected. And with that, what you need to do is you need to create a new context, both online and in person, for these people to actually build these connections, whether it is going back into the office and realizing that part of the office is siloed from that part, and they really should be connecting, changing the seating layout to ensure that that actually is encouraged. Even online engagement, especially with senior leadership. In our organizations, we've got this in our team, a kind of a coffee moment where it's like coffee roulette, and once every 2 weeks, you have an opportunity to potentially connect with someone senior in your organization and have 30 minutes of any conversation you might want to have, which also kind of just encourages you to understand more about what's happening in your organization and building your experience of feeling part of that company. The last thing that Andreas actually talks about is the fact that people are struggling to collaborate. Here it's important to understand what functions in your organizations should be really connecting very well with what other functions, and try and design an environment and a space to ensure that that actually happens. And he mentioned one of the smartest things you can do is have temporary incubators. So understand which teams really should be connecting with each other. And then for the next 2 weeks in this environment, we're going to encourage those teams to all work from that space. And in that space, you put all your materials up, people can learn from each other, they can overhear other things, and you're building that opportunity for people to connect, to collaborate, and to innovate. Let's jump on. So the key to a more equitable future, to do so, we must more purposefully connect workplace strategies with people-centered outcomes. And this is really, really key. Real estate, the role of real estate and the people within that organization and HR is becoming extremely, extremely important. And we need to emphasize all the key elements of what impact they can have. So their workplace strategy really should be focused around the people that go into that environment. And I'll cover that in a bit more detail. So what are the key opportunities for hybrid workplaces? The first one is it's there to promote an equitable work experience for everyone. The second one is creating belonging through inclusive workplace design practices. And I'll finish off with that, a specific look at what you can do in your environments to design spaces to be more inclusive for everyone. Let's jump into the first one. Hybrid moves beyond the binary view of work location. However, many organizations are still seeking the magic formula for who works where. And they're competing. They're saying office versus the home. And it's not office versus the home or home versus the office. It's a combined experience of work. If you have to think, where will I be my most productive on Monday? You might go, that's exactly where I'll be my best. But what about Wednesday? What about Thursday next week? I don't necessarily know where I'll be my absolute best, but having that choice and the ability to choose can make me significantly more productive. Considering the myriad of factors that impact experiences, so the many, many factors that actually impact our experience of work, employees know best where they can be their most productive. And I've been joining a lot of great conferences where you see large organizations showing where the more flexibility they offer employees, the more they actually entice them to come back into that environment. And if you have to think about it, if you are inviting your employees along to be part of your hybrid strategy, explain the why we are better together. Explain what it's like for new employees to engage with us and engage with our team. The fact that we love for you to be with us is a much better option than sending a reminder email saying, this is the corporate policy, you have to be in the office 3 days a week, which makes it authoritarian. You know, top down kind of pointing at you, you have to do this. And for most people, we don't like to be told what to do. And then they push back. Even some people that want to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week might feel, you know what, you're telling me to be in the office 3 days a week, so I'm not going to come in the other 2 days. So this is from the Future Forum. Us as MillerKnoll, Boston Consultancy, and Slack, we form part of the Future Forum. And we engage 10,000 knowledge workers from the US, from Japan, from Australia, from Germany, from France, from all around the world every 3 months. And we get a pulse check and we do executive roundtables on what is the experience of work like right now for knowledge workers all around the world, to give us a real good detailed insights on how things are changing during the pandemic and consistently now. And these are some of the numbers that change quite frequently. They're moving up quite quickly, that we're seeing right now from the recent report that's out. 79% of people want more flexibility with where they work. So the best staff working for you right now, employees starting to think about where they want to go work in the future, 79% of them want the flexibility to choose where they work, whether that's at home, whether that's my local co-working space, or whether that is your HQ. On the right-hand side, 94% of people want more flexibility with when they can work. And giving this flexibility is extremely important. This is 94%. Now, I know I'm very good being able to work very well early in the morning, and the afternoon not so well. But giving people that freedom, giving them that choice, you know what? Do your emails in the morning. If you want to come into the office at 10, that's fine. Let's set some key core hours that we know we want to collaborate, whether that's between, say, 10 and 2 or whatever works for your organization. Those collaboration hours, we would love for you to be available, and we want to have access to you. Not location-based, but we want to be able to work very well with you within that time, because this is the high demand. And I don't know where I'm going to be most productive. I might want to skip the heavy traffic, the travel, the peak times, the trains, and come in a little bit later, do my emails from home in the morning, and then still be productive throughout the day. So giving people that flexibility really can improve their experience of work. We know the two groups stood out among the research respondents as highly benefiting from flexibility, and that was working parents, especially working mothers who traditionally have more caregiving responsibilities, and then people of color who are experiencing microaggressions within an office environment. So it's an important tool to give to people to make them feel like they're still part of your organization and they have the power to manage their time. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat box. I can't see anything in there right now, but what Oliver will do is he'll ask me all the questions right at the end of the talk. And you know, we're seeing data points like this coming out. The future of the office is going to be whiter and more male, because we know that white men are, in their demand and their requests, are more likely, around 30%, want to be back in the office full time. So we have to be very careful about what is the environments that we will be creating in the future if we want to create a more inclusive experience for everyone. Providing choice is only as good as the quality of choices you provide. And this is so incredibly important. You know, if people are going to be able to work from home one day, or say 2 days working from home a week, that is 40% of their productive time. So if you're looking after their environments and their health when they're in an office environment, how are you looking after them when they're working from home? Or are you giving them access to a co-working space close by where they guarantee that they'll be able to get some focus work done and be in a healthy environment? But even within the office environment itself, the workplaces that we create, providing an average space is not good enough anymore. Providing great variety and choice can solve so many issues. In 60 seconds, I'm going to quickly just show you how variety and choice can resolve three of the biggest things, the biggest issues that we're experiencing in offices right now. So if I'm working in an environment and the lighting is just not conducive for me to be able to get my work done very well, it's too bright, it's too dark, and we all have different sensory needs. If I have variety and choice, I can choose to go and sit over there and be productive. I can choose to go sit over there and still be productive. If there's too much noise within this environment, you know what? I'm being distracted right here, sitting in this space, and you've provided variety for me. You've provided choice for me. I can just get up and go sit over there, or even vice versa. It's too quiet. I can go sit in that space where it's a little bit more buzzy, and I can feed off that. Or if you're sitting in a space, it's too hot in here, or a standard, a lot of the times it's way too cold. When you provide variety and choice, people have the ability to choose to go and sit somewhere where the temperature is more perfect for them to be able to get their work done very well. So those two words are extremely important when it comes to great space design. With great autonomy comes great responsibility. So almost a story from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility to make choices effectively and elevate actual performance. And this top line, I absolutely like this, love this. We have conversations with people to try and understand how do we encourage people to come back in. Freedom within a framework is a really good way to position this. We have Kirsten saying that this on screen. We've taken a deep look at the different kinds of work we do and the resources and tools we need to be successful in a hybrid model. Ultimately, we're providing freedom within a framework and having groups and teams define their own norms and consider team and individual needs and preferences. And this is where great management and training of of managers is really, really important. They can see on an individual perspective, of course, still looking at the needs of the organization, but where to be adaptable around their team and encourage them to come together when it's best suited for all of them. So on this point, we have conversations with our clients, and my colleague Ryan Anderson had a chat with the head of Okta, head of dynamic work from Okta, Sam Fisher, and I quickly want to share with you this video.
Okay, Sam, thank you. Let's start with basics. Can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
I am the head of dynamic work at Okta, and so my role here is really to think about the employee experience in terms of an ecosystem. And really the premise of it is based on equity. So a lot of remote roles previously had been sort of a byproduct of an organization where I'm going to give you a laptop and I'm going to give you the access to get into the network so that you can still be productive. But it wasn't really equitable, right? So if you were a remote employee and you joined a meeting remotely and then the conversation hung up, the conversation could continue for the folks that were still physically co-located. So dynamic work is really based on the philosophy of equity. So equitable choice in where and how and when you work, equitable access to information, equitable access to coaching and development and growth opportunities, and then more importantly, equitable and valuable contributions to work product. So how do we make sure that when we think about our tools and we think about our processes, how are teams working together? How are they all sharing information equitably in a way where everyone feels like their contribution is valuable, but not so much that like our APAC team feels like they have to be up in the middle of the night to work with our North American team. So my role is really a very cultural one. It's really about redefining. We have a really incredible culture here at Okta, and it's very values driven, but it's a lot of augmenting that. And what are the next steps for how do we take this to a very dynamic environment?
I did love that term from her, dynamic work. Very interesting way of looking at this. We'll send you some insights around that too. So next up, we want to look at inclusive design. So inclusive design presents an important opportunity to improve office space for everyone. And the key thing around inclusive design is in the past, we might have designed spaces for the average person, the average 80%. And then we try and accommodate the edges. And that's not inclusive design. Inclusive design is, what if we design environments and spaces for the edges, for everyone to have a good experience, because that cascades down to actually every single employee having a better experience of that environment. So just looking at it from the other way. Now, let's just quickly look at the definition. Inclusive design is an aspiration and a method for approaching the design of places, things, information, communication, and policy that focuses on user well-being. It assumes the full range of human abilities as ordinary and not requiring special accommodation. And I love that description. And we at MillerKnoll have been looking at this for quite some time. When you start looking at inclusive design, it is a mammoth elements are involved in looking at improving this. There's research and design practices, everything from neuroscience to evidence-based design. cognitive science, neurodiversity, sensory processing, empathy, DE&I, physical safety, and of course then the building codes with great elements from LEED, building. But there is so much to encompass just this one specific element around inclusive design and well-being. I'm quickly going to share with you one additional conversation with the Director of Real Estate from Expedia.
What do people need? And are we fulfilling all the diversity questions and all the inclusion considerations that have been emerging?
Tell me a little bit more in terms of how you think workplace can be more inclusive or create more equitable experiences than maybe the way it did in the past.
Expedia started that question, and we sat down, we looked at each other and said, well, what does it even mean, you know? Because we'd like to think we were fair and equitable. Well, everyone thinks that, you know. So the good part of it, we had democratized the workplace. So to begin with, we didn't have things like private offices and private suites and stuff. It's really, everything's accessible to everyone. There are no private offices. People would just book out rooms for slightly extended periods. We then looked at it from an ADA perspective, and we realized that, well, definitely for the US, it's a federal requirement, so we all met it. Then we started looking, well, what's equivalent around the world? And that was interesting because it's equivalent, it's not equal, and there's some places where it doesn't matter. And so we were bringing in our ADA requirements there. So that, right up to that, which is some level of physical disability, a great level of physical access, and some attention to visual disabilities. But then you read about young people who rely on apps today and voice commands and don't really read Braille. And so then you say, well, okay, I get that we have a code requirement, so we'll provide it, but why aren't we thinking ahead to that next generation? So we started calling it Beyond ADA, just to give ourselves a threshold. And it's very organic to us, and we're literally looking at it as, what does the building provide? So, you know, a landlord site, what are its limitations? What do we provide in our work style? So I'm in a room that's a little darker, a little dimmer, a little quieter. And that's supposed to help the hypersensitive end of the neurodiversity spectrum. And then are my activity spaces more well-equipped for the hyposensitive side of the spectrum? You know, so we're looking at those things. Different people will pick and choose on the choice spectrum, not just how high they want their desk or low, but how dark they need the space to be, or how structured a meeting they'd like to run. So that's sort of where we're at. We're looking at what does the building provide, what does the workplace provide, and then what do we do as a facility?
One of our other clients had a conversation with us and explained that in their spaces from all around the world, they have people that are a little bit hard of hearing. And what they found that is if you provide meeting rooms with just rectangular tables, the people can't read the mouths of the people in the room, so they don't join the meeting. They sit outside or they work from home. And what they simply did was just put in round tables and more meetings, and where those employees were involved, they just chose those meeting rooms, and suddenly they made them more inclusive. So there are some small changes that can have a pretty big impact on people feeling that they feel a part of that organization in that space. So what I want to share with you and finish off is 3 guiding lenses. The very first point for us when we look at inclusive design is going beyond barrier-free. So spaces that eliminate the real or even perceived barriers of successful use. And there's some great examples out there, you know, spaces or work environments that actually provide nursing rooms. If you don't have that, of course, that is an actual issue. We had a fantastic speaker on, which we will send you a video to, called Kate Usher, who looks at menopause in the workplace. And if you don't provide appropriate variety, choice, rooms where it can be cooler, where you're completely closed off without kind of views to the employees and in the space, she finds that 10% of women will then actually leave the workforce because the environment isn't conducive for them to be able to feel that they can work in there comfortably based on their needs. So there are real barriers, and there are also perceived barriers. So let's just look at some examples for considerations. Providing generous circulation and prevent unexpected hazards for easy and intuitive mobility, especially if you find that, you know what, we need less desks in the environment because we're running a hybrid strategy. It's free address, people can sit where they want. Let's create better environments for community socialization. Creating more circulation space will make people feel better using that environment and give them better access to that space. You know, everything should be intuitive. If you look at this, we say providing more variety of postures and seating types, depending on, you know, do you want to have, say, a meeting in the space? Or, you know, most people don't want to have a meeting in an enclosed room. Let's go sit in the space where we expect the noise level to be elevated. That's why you provide laptop stands. But again, there are choices in the environment in the space to choose how much of yourself do you want to share? Do I want to be slightly on the outside? Do I want to hear other people talking? Do I really want to be in the buzz? In this space, you can choose the environment based on your actual needs. So we look at this design, the surroundings, the furnishings and tools to ensure neutral body positions and easy reach. You know, having a big touch screen where someone short can't actually reach the top of it means you can't use it at all. Having big tables with spaces where I have to reach so far to try and actually find somewhere to plug my laptop in, that is an inclusive design. If I have to crawl under the desk just to get access to power or the things that I need, that is not a barrier-free design. So we have to go and really look at the spaces that we have and go, what can we do to improve this for everyone? The last one, movable elements should be easily movable and offer handles or other easy means of control. If you have a screen or a sliding door and it's not very easy for one person to move it, it isn't a movable screen. It should be very easy for anyone to be able to adapt their spaces if that is the purpose of what they are being supplied for. Let's look at the second lens. We feel before we think. Our senses subconsciously read the world around us, and we all have different sensory needs, but we get a pretty instant idea of what we want from that environment or what it is I can do there. Products should clearly communicate their function based on their context, their orientation to one another. And you can see in this environment, where can I sit? Where is going to be good for me to have a one-on-one chat with someone? Where can I have my lunch? Even simple things like the standing height table in the middle. If there's no privacy screen there, then basically if I'm wearing a dress, I'll automatically not sit in that environment. But there's loads of choices there for you, and it's clearly defined by the furniture and the design of the space. Provide consistent technology user interfaces based upon function. Please, there shouldn't be an A4 page from IT saying this is what you're supposed to do to try and connect to a screen, and then a completely different set of instructions when you move into the next room right next to you. It should be very simple, very intuitive. Struggling with that, especially if you have to do a presentation to your colleagues, can be extremely increase your anxiety and your stress level, which doesn't create a great experience of the work environment that you're in. Color, texture, and contrast should facilitate navigation and use. This is quite a bright environment. If you look at the first setting there, I kind of like the contrast between, say, the green chairs and the lighter carpet below it. So for those people that are slightly visually impaired, there's a clear definition around where the edge of the seat is, which just improves my way of using that environment. Provide a range of choices within an environment and convey agency through user adaptability. And again, that user adaptability is slightly a difficult point to reference. Of course, you don't want people to change all the desks in the environment, but if you provide variety and choice, people will feel that they can adapt things around them. Make the screens movable, Give them some elements where they can move around, which you will be happy for them to be able to move around, so they can create the environment that's best for them and the function that they're having. And the very last one of this is empowering experiences. An environment can facilitate belonging and provide assurances. For examples of this, include a broad cross-section in the design and beware of singling out specific users. Be very careful of just designing an environment for one element that you're focusing on. Say, for instance, designing a space for just Generation Z. You might be surprised that a lot of the things that they need is the same what other generations need, but be very careful about just focusing on one element and look at the broader spectrum of all the needs to create a more inclusive space. Strengthen relationships between teams through community spaces, and great community spaces allow for that. In lockdown, we all suffered from not having the connections with what we call the weak ties. So not your immediate team, there's people that you just bump into. The people in finance and logistics and customer care and HR, the people that you just have a great conversation with because the environment that you've been into created the opportunity for you to have that conversation. And maybe even better for you to be able to become friends. That creates a better experience of work within an environment. Build trust within specific teams, your strong times, your immediate teams, through immersive settings. We know if you have free address and running a hybrid strategy, when a team goes in, the whole team wants to go in at the same time. All the tools that that team needs to be able to function very well on a day needs to be available to them. A space for them to work, a space for them to come together, rooms for them to be able to jump into if they need to. All of that needs to be facilitated by the large team all coming in on the same days, especially great analog tools, always more whiteboards. And allow users to regulate their privacy, to concentrate or restore. And this is one of the biggest issues we're seeing in environments right now, where the noise level is too high. People get distracted from the conversations that they're overhearing, from the video calls that's happening in close proximity to them. So you need environments where people are guaranteed that they are able to get focused work done without interruption. If you're running a hybrid strategy, and I wake up in the morning and I have a choice between going into a wonderful working environment or working from home, and I think for a second that the noise level is going to be too high and I won't be productive, and I have a choice, I'm not going to go in. So providing an average space is not good enough. It has to be a fantastic environment where you're ensured that you will be productive when you go in. Environments like this, in this space, specifically in this photo, that is, you can call a library area. Of course, don't call it somewhere where you say, don't do this, don't be on your phone, just call it a library space. And you're guaranteed that in that environment, you'll be able to get some focused work done, and you can scatter them through your space depending on how large your office is. Now, we know that none of this is very easy. We're still working on hybrid working, equitable experiences, and inclusive design. And I want to share with you a video about what we've done.
I think that what's changed for us in the last year is that we now understand that offices sit amongst a network of places, including homes, including other offices, including coffee shops. And so I think what we now know is that the office has absolutely a vital role in bringing together people. The design yard front door for us, the goal was for that to be the sort of the tip of the spear. This is for us to do our best testing, our most advanced thinking, to fail fast, acknowledge it, and then come back to it, change it, and then share that with our customers.
In our design yard transformation project and in all of our pipeline projects, our North Star is putting the employee experience first. As a company, we really prioritize this notion of equitability and inclusivity in terms of employees' work experience at the company and even in the physical environment. We're adopting a hybrid model, future focused. And so with that comes leveraging the home office experience and the workplace experience to help people do their best work no matter where they're located. Given the freedom and flexibility of choice, we can help bolster things like engagement, which also helps with attraction and retention and can help improve other organizational outcomes like productivity. We're really trying to flip the model, if you will, shifting towards a much more group-based and shared kind of strategy. So when we surveyed our employees, the activities that weren't well supported at home included this notion of informal socialization at work. So this idea of community socialization. The second is intensive team focus and collaboration. And lastly, thinking about tending to individual intensive focused work.
We wanted that initial reaction of employees and visitors to be one that spoke to the brand spirit and just made people feel good when they entered the space.
It was really important for us to approach this project from a point of empathy when we were thinking about things like color, pattern, all of these visual levers that we could pull to enhance the mood of a space. That was really important that we thought about it from that human perspective.
Knowing that our future is hybrid and that we're now looking at our office as an on-demand resource and tool and an on-demand destination, we're going to be looking at our utilization data as a proxy for destination or draw, if you will, with the goal and the hope that our utilization will increase as a result of being able to offer people experiences and settings that aren't well supported or offered in a home environment. I think we can all say and agree that the world is always changing, and so should we.
But we're here to help. So what we will do is we will send some research and insights on all the new things, thank you, Oliver, that we're doing right now. We will email this in a follow-up email to all of you. There's some great documents, some great research, specifically the ones around designing a better tomorrow. There's a brand new Looking Forward podcast out, which is available on most streaming sites. There's a really good one from our colleague Ryan Anderson that just focuses on what's my return to work, return to the office strategy, and what should that actually look like. So if you're interested in that, feel free to sign up to that and get our regular podcasts. But we are here to help. So if you're interested, engage with us. Send me an email, engage with Oliver, ask us what's happening in the future. Maybe you would like this insight to be presented to your team or to a leadership team, and we would be very happy to support you with that. So if you have a project and you're thinking, I need some help with that, feel free to engage with us and we'll help as much as we can. On that note, I want to say thank you very much. That's my name. You can find me on LinkedIn if you point your camera towards that QR code. I'm also on Instagram, which is at Bertie_workplace. Feel free to engage with me. Hopefully that QR code worked, Oliver. I saw you had your camera up. So hopefully that will take you to my LinkedIn page where we share loads of additional insights and research. Now, we do have some time left. If you have any additional questions now, feel free to type it in the chat box. And what my lovely colleague Oliver is going to do is he's going to read them out, and I'm going to try and help you as much as I possibly can with any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for that, Bertie. That was a really good presentation, much better than the one this morning, but that was pretty good too as well. So thank you very much for that. We do have a few questions that came in. Before we get to them, I'd just like to say a big apology to anyone that struggled with any audio issues. I hope that you got those resolved as the presentation went on. So it's really tricky. Yeah, you know, I know some people had problems logging into WebEx as well. There isn't one platform that really kind of solves all of these issues. Zoom has its problems, so does Teams, and we've tried them all. Honestly, we have, but it just seems that WebEx is the one that is the most stable and gives us all the functionality that we require. So I apologize for those that struggle to get on. Hopefully, you'll have a better experience next time. Maybe you could download the desktop app in advance, and that might give you a more smoother experience rather than just from the browser. It's always good to check your internet connection where you are as well. And if you are having any issues on your laptop, maybe try on a tablet or your mobile phone for the video or audio separately. That's another way that you could work around this. All right, so that's enough of my waffle. Let's get to the questions. So Rebecca asks a really good question, I like to think anyway. Why is the white male demographic the one primarily drawn to the formal office environment?
That's a really, really good question. I wish I had a clear answer to you. That is literally what the data is telling us. It could be traditional. It could be historic from historic working practices where, you know, the social environment is women stay home with the kids, men go back to, go into an office or work. That's what the data is telling us. So I can't give you detailed insights around the sociology of that, but that is what we're having right now. You know, when you start looking at other demographics, they're about half of what it is for white males who want to go back into the office on a 5 days a week kind of process. But it is a very, very tricky one.
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, work, white collar work at least anyway, and offices was created by white males or white males. Everything from the shirt, suit, and tie. You know, there's a whole kind of picture that's been painted that was really kind of devised by that subset of individuals. So that's probably why they're more drawn to the office than other demographics. Okay, so there's one from Vivian. Do you see us moving towards an entirely shared office space rather than micromanaging which departments sit where? With this, how do you ensure that those who need to adjust, who need adjustment, sorry, for example, disabilities or people of determination, as we call them in the Middle East, feel included?
So we do see a future where, of course, there will be complete free address, as in most instances, not for everyone, not for every organization. It will be a situation where anyone can pretty much sit anywhere. But to address that, the idea here is you need to design for those people with the disabilities first. When we create more circulation space, when we create more access, when we create a better working environment for those people that you might see at the ends or the fringes, everyone has a better experience. So it's rethinking actually how we design our environments, not from this is how many people we have, this per head go into that space, but let's create a great environment, wonderful space, understand our occupancy rates, understand how many people we will have in that environment. So the other trick here, of course, is, you know, even pre-pandemic, you know, offices were empty at least 50% of the time, at least 50%. So post-pandemic, we have to rethink how we create the environments and what we want out of them. We think about three key things. We think about great individual work, community socialization, and immersive teamwork. And that's what we focus on.
Also, just to add, for those that have the unassigned experience, so for those employees, and not necessarily every employee in an organization might have that opportunity, it's also a good idea to layer in neighborhood-based planning. So, you know, marketing are sitting, they know where they can find marketing. That is kind of their area, but they can sit in multiple locations within that kind of neighborhood-based approach. And that's what we're starting to see being laid on top of the unassigned and the activity-based working experience. It was really kind of popularized in Australia as they were the first ones to really embrace activity-based working. All right, cool. Next question from Ella. Will we have access to this presentation after the session to refer back to as a resource?
We won't send the presentation as it is, but we will give you everything that's in it. So every data point, every slide that I spoke about, all of it will be referenced in a specific article, and then all the other links, including the things from Kate Usher, Andreas Hofbauer, all those references that I've made, you're going to get all of that in a follow-up email explaining what they are and a quick link access to everything that you have. The one thing I would strongly recommend is that you look at the Future Forum website. It continuously gets updated with new data, and it's incredible getting a consistent idea of what's happening in the world and what they are predicting. It's really fantastic source that I would strongly recommend you look at. Yep.
The next question's from Carolyn, but I'm going to shorten the question.
Okay.
Where do you see elements that workplace design can learn from hospitality and retail design?
I mean, the one of the main things to understand is when we look at that point around we feel before we think, we create a long-term perception about an organization as a client, as an employee, when we actually go into that environment. And what is that experience like? Retail, and just so you know, co-working is really, really stealing all the employees from hospitality, from hotels as their community managers, because these people know how to really engage with people. But when we start looking at the environment, that welcome is really important. You experience that every single day. And what is that experience like? How do you feel when you come into that environment? Do you go, oh, I'm in the office? Or do you go, wow, yeah, I'm in the office? What is your welcome like? Is there someone that gets up and go, hi, lovely to see you? Is it a fantastic experience? And this is what retail and hospitality do very, very, very well. So that's what I would take from it.
Yeah, I think it's adding the hospitable nature of hospitality to the commercial environment, because I don't think many offices are all that hospitable if you scratch beneath the surface. And they didn't necessarily need to be, did they? Because you were paid to go in there.
Yeah. Just on that note, there's a really good report which we'll include in the email from McKinsey around toxic workplaces, where it really goes into detail to explain how people are negatively affected around the environment that they actually go in. And it is massively culture based. And this is things that a lot of the times, you can't design it out. You really need to work on it. You need to identify it. It's work with managers to ensure that you don't incur that all the time. Sorry.
Cool. Next one's from Michael. What thoughts do you have on balancing individual needs and preferences with community priorities? To paraphrase Mr. Spock, when do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one?
Very, very, very good question. Of course, you need balance. You need balance with everything. When we're looking at, say, even the office environment itself, we know that space can't be designed for collaborative work only, because you don't collaborate for 9 hours in a day. You might collaborate for 3 or 4 hours, and then you need time to be able to work very well on your own. And if you don't provide a space for people to be able to do head down focus work without interruption, guess what? They don't want to be in. But you're right, the balance is really, really important. The key thing here is how you encourage people. I will strongly recommend that you do listen to that podcast from Ryan Anderson on Looking Forward, just to understand what are some of the best ways to encourage people to engage with your organization and be part of your team and invite them back. Because how you manage that is also very, very important. There's other things to understand. Some people will want to be in the office 5 days a week. They want to, because the home environment is super distracting. We had 26,000 respondents to our global working from home tool, and 59% of people said the biggest issues when working from home was productivity and focus. So you need to be able to allow these people to come back, again, being a bit more flexible around what those times are, but give them access to that environment.
Thank you, B. So this one's from Renato. Yesterday, we had a webinar for the Cornet Global Brazil chapter to talk about activity-based workplaces. Are you guys focusing in on the noise levels due to the very open space we have in these new layouts?
A very good question. I was with the Cornet France team on Monday, and we had a whole separate conversation related to this and environmentally friendly or sustainable work and workplaces. It's when we start looking at environments, if they are designed not very well, it means there's not enough variety and there's not enough choice within that space. A lot of people just try and put a plaster over their workplace by just adding in another booth. Let's add in another booth. Let's add in another booth. And you're stacking your environments just full of booths that are hopefully going to encourage people to have calls in that environment. And sorry, Oliver, if you could just mute yourself very quickly, it would be much appreciated. So the idea around this is, in that environment, is we have to rethink how we design those spaces. I had a client who called me up and asked, we've got this wonderful layout, all the executives are this side with all the rooms and all the spaces, and then everyone else is going to work in that space. And I said, please, let's not do this. Let's just call that side of the office the library area. Everyone has access to it, but in that space, you don't have a video call out loud. So they didn't buy anything new. They didn't change the layout. All we did was just call that space the library area. And automatically people start policing each other. In that space, you have video call, you don't have video calls at your desk, you use one of the rooms available. And the other side of the office is the team, collaborative, engaging, and social spaces. So the idea here is if you just have open plan with no variety and choice, that's when the noise levels become unbearable and you can't get your work done. And I've seen examples where there's 100 people all with big headphones on, and it completely defeats the object of actually even being close to each other. So the design of that space is very, very important. And there's incredible things you can do with the current environments that you have. Simple things. If you're interested to find out, feel free to talk to us and we'll be happy to share with you even more ideas. Do you have time for another question, Oliver?
Well, the last question from Anne-Marie was also around noise and just kind of helping to mitigate the auditory distraction in open plan environments. But I think you kind of pretty much covered it there, really.
I think on that noise level point is what we have to understand is how distracting it is. In this behavior, you have to explain to people, if you're sitting at a cluster of 6 desks and someone's sitting at that side and someone's sitting at that side, if you have a video call, no one else at that space will be productive for the whole time that you have that call. And the reason is you understand the conversations that they're having. You understand it, and you're trying to complete the conversations whilst you're working. You'll be unproductive the whole time. That's why if you're sitting in a coffee shop, it's not a problem because you don't know the people in that space. So it isn't distracting for you. But we have to create environments and policies to explain that in the certain part of your space, here you don't have a video call. You don't have a call on your phone out loud. There are spaces for you to do that. There's a team collaborative space. There's a community socialization area where just take it in there. And suddenly you're improving the experience for everyone in that specific environment if you're just using a booth or using a meeting room or using the other spaces to have those calls. But you need to encourage that, enforce, and help people to explain that this is what we want you to do in these environments, because that's really going to improve their productivity. I've even seen some people just use things like Microsoft Teams, and then they put a certain area of their space. It's very simple to do. You could do it in seconds. Those are bookable areas. And because it's a bookable area, and if you don't arrive in, say, 30 minutes and say, I've checked in, the space becomes available to everyone else. But if it's a bookable space, in that space, it's dead quiet. So you're guaranteed that if I wake up in the morning and I have a choice between the office and a home, that I'm going to go into the office because there is a quiet table that I know I'll be productive at. So you're not changing the layout, you're not changing the design, but simple ways that can really improve or make people feel like I am going to be productive when I go into that environment.
Sounds like we need another presentation just on like noise suppression in offices. Yeah.
I have one on individual focus work and noise. I do have that. We might have to schedule another one.
Yeah, that was great, Bertie. Thank you so much for everybody that attended. We had over 160 attendees today from all over the world, from some really far-flung places. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And Bertie, again, fantastic job, buddy. Anything that you'd like to include in your closing remarks?
I just want to say thank you very much. We have loads of these talks coming up. One of our colleagues, Ryan Anderson, will be talking about technology in the workplace. If this is of interest, please look at our Insight webinar schedule of events. There's a really incredible speakers on loads of different topics. Feel free to sign up to those, and hopefully there'll be 2 of those sessions available on a day 2 that will fit with your calendar and time. But on that note, thank you very much for joining us. Feel free to engage with us. We always have more things to share and really appreciate it. Oliver, great job. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.